Well, you know what they say, all good things must come to an end. And now we are going to wrap up the Ottoman Rise of the Ottoman Season 2 Mehmed II series by Kings and Generals. So yeah, this will be really interesting, and like I said, I won't be back with the Ottomans by Kings and Generals until at least they release the next season. Which I don't know, with the way Kings and Generals has definitely been working with the Ottomans, he seems invested himself because he got these videos out pretty quick. So who knows, maybe if he keeps it up, we'll be back with the Ottomans before this year ends. So that'll be really cool. But yeah, let's wrap it up and see the end of Mehmed II. So if you oh wait, but first, if you want to watch the original video by Kings and Generals, the link is down in the description down below. And if you enjoy my content and want to help me out in any way, shape, or form, feel free to please like, comment, and subscribe. It would really help me out a lot, and I would appreciate it. Thank you. Now, with that said, and now without any further ado, let's get to it. Let's wrap this up in the 8th and final part of the Ottoman Empire Mehmed II series by Kings and Generals.
By 1480, the Ottoman Empire had finally achieved relative peace after nearly 30 years of continuous warfare. Since his youth, Sultan Mehmed II had removed all threats to his realm one by one. Venice, Moldavia, and the Akkuyunlu were defeated in open war and forced to sign humiliating peace treaties with the Sublime Porte. Serbia, Bosnia, Albania, the Karamanids, and the last remnants of the Byzantine Empire were conquered, and their peoples were incorporated into the larger Ottoman Empire. Lastly, Wallachia, the Crimean Khanate, Ragusa, and Herzegovina were brought into imperial vassalage and made to pay an annual tribute to Constantinople. However, the peaceful period of 1480 did not satisfy Mehmed, who had been secretly seeking new targets to expand his already vast borders.
He's already accomplished so much, but like all great conquerors, it's never enough for Mehmed. There's more to keep going. Like, people who are known as conquerors seem to all have that in common, and it makes sense too. They have that conqueror spirit, as I call it.
True to his relentless and stubborn nature, the Turkish Caesar planned to launch the most ambitious military campaign in his country's history. But to do so, he had one final target nearer to home. Recognizing its importance in projecting power across the wider region, especially in asserting naval dominance, the Sultan set his sights on the major Mediterranean island of Rhodes. The Order of Knights of the Hospital of St. John of Jerusalem, also known as the Knights Hospitaller, was a Catholic military order founded in 1113, tasked with defending holy shrines across the Kingdom of Jerusalem. The order fought in the Levant against various Islamic enemies over the course of several decades. It gained fame for its military achievements until the fall of the last Crusader stronghold, Acre, to the Mamluks in 1291. Although their lordship had fallen, the order would reinvent itself in the years ahead. Displaced from the Holy Land, the Hospitallers regrouped in the Kingdom of Cyprus and spent the next 2 decades in exile, before capturing the island of Rhodes from the Byzantines in 1309. From their new island base, the order committed to fighting infidels and to drive the Muslim corsairs from the coasts and seas of the Christians. The Knights Hospitallers took part in the battles of Kosovo and Nicopolis, as well as numerous attacks on the Sultan's ships in the Aegean over the decades. However, while the Turks were busy with the Crusade of Varna, the Hospitallers were unable to capitalize on the military situation, as they were repulsing an invasion by the Mamluks of Egypt that same year. After the fall of Constantinople, Rhodes' fortifications were reinforced with new ramparts, towers, and ditches, as Ottoman ships began probing the area. This would prove crucial for the order's survival in the years ahead. By 1476, the nearby Hospitaller islands of Simi and Kos were attacked by Turkish raiders, followed the next year by an attack on the town of Arkangelos on the main island. After the Ottoman-Venetian War ended in 1479, local Ottoman Sipahi contingents from Anatolia also arrived on Rhodes. They laid siege to the main city for 3 months, setting the countryside ablaze. Although the invaders were eventually pushed back, tensions between the courts of Rhodes and Constantinople increased by year's end, as Mehmed decided to finally end the order that had been a thorn in his realm's side for nearly a century.
Okay, during the siege of the fortress of Rhodes, our artillery fired 100 cannons continuously for 40 days. Walls collapsed, towers were split asunder, stones flew through the air, and the sound was like a rolling thunder.
Grand Admiral Messi Pasha prepared a large army to take Rhodes once and for all the following
Okay, so he's the illegitimate nephew of the last Byzantine emperor. Oh yeah. Wow.
spring. Wintering at Marmaris on the Anatolian coast, the Byzantine-turned Ottoman vizier assembled a fleet of over 100 ships and 20,000 soldiers for his invasion. On the morning of May 23, 1480, the Ottoman fleet was seen from Rhodes, shocking and terrifying the island's residents. Only a small force of 1,900 militia and 600 elite knights was stationed in the city's fortress, under the command of Grand Master Pierre d'Aubusson. Anchoring and disembarking from the Bay of Trieste, the Ottoman army marched towards the slope of Mount St. Stephen and set up a headquarters overlooking the land walls. The next day, the city was surrounded by land and sea, with cannons firing at the capital from all directions. Along with the land army were 3 large bronze basilica cannons, similar to those used during the Siege of Constantinople 27 years earlier. The initial goal was to capture the Tower of St. Nicholas at the entrance of the Mandraki harbour, where most of the Order's military fleet was anchored. Securing this key tower would enable the Ottoman fleet to sail into the harbour and overpower the already panicked and outnumbered defenders of Rhodes. After weeks of heavy bombardment, the west-facing wall of the tower collapsed after taking 300 cannonballs to its base. On June 4th, the first attack on the collapsed wall was launched, but was repelled by a group of knights led by Fabrizio del Carretto. In the following days, hundreds of residents worked tirelessly to repair the tower amid heavy cannon fire. With the defenders desperately holding out against the Ottoman war machine, good news arrived for Pierre d'Aubusson in the form of a Sicilian cargo ship. The vessel had managed to slip through the besieging Turkish fleet, carrying vital grain and 100 volunteers ready to defend the city. After 2 more attacks on the Tower of St. Nicholas were repelled in early June, an increasingly anxious Messi Pasha turned to the southern land walls, which were older and thus considered more vulnerable than the northern sea walls. The southern towers of England, Provence and Italy were subjected to bombardment, while pressure on the Tower of St. Nicholas intensified, stretching the defenders thin on all sides. With Ottoman...
That's the problem. Regardless of if these defenses are formidable or not, the Ottomans have far more manpower and I feel like far more resources to keep this up forever, and they also have the will to not want to quit. Meanwhile, yeah, just 2,000 knights definitely, and then there comes the hunger. If hunger starts to come in, I mean, granted, that was a good, unless they can keep finding ways to keep slipping past the Ottoman navy, that could potentially become a problem. And again, the artillery. The Ottomans have great artillery. They took Constantinople. So, yeah, this already seems at a loss. But who knows, maybe Rhodes might surprise me. The Knights might.
Artillery becoming more effective than in recent weeks, d'Aubusson ordered a secondary defensive line and ditch to be built behind the southern walls in the Jewish quarter of the city to prepare for a possible breach. Meanwhile, Ottoman engineers started digging a complex network of trenches leading up to the moat in front of the land walls. At night, they transported carts filled with rubble and dumped them into the moat to raise its level. To buy more time, d'Aubusson commanded his miners to tunnel beneath the land walls, bringing rubble from inside the moat back into the city under cover of darkness. Come morning, the besiegers were confused to find that their night's work had been undone.
Dang.
While progress was being made in the south, pressure on the Tower of St. Nicholas was intensifying. Between June 13th and 18th, a furious bombardment took place on the tower, while a great pontoon bridge was constructed, which was long enough to reach from the shoreline to the mole of the harbour.
Holy crap.
On the night of the 18th, Janissaries carrying...
Wow. That's cool. But, yeah, again, it's just, the Ottomans can overwhelm them. I don't mean to be such a Debbie Downer with the Rhodes. Like, I'm already talking as if they were already defeated. It's just, I don't know. Just at this point, the Ottomans are just unstoppable in my eyes. Like they're not even at their peak yet. That's the wildest part. You know, they're still on the rise. We have yet to see the Ottomans at their peak, and they're already just probably one of the most powerful like empires in the entire world. So yeah, I just poor Rhodes. They don't. I don't think they have a chance, dude.
Ladders and hook ropes assaulted the mole and the base of the tower. Nevertheless, in a brave last stand, Fabrizio del Carretto's knights held the line long enough for the city's cannons upon its walls to target and destroy the pontoon bridge. With the bridge's destruction, many Turkish soldiers were thrown into the water and drowned in their armor, while the soldiers on the mole were now left stranded.
Ooh.
To complete the disaster, fire ships were unleashed on the Ottoman garrisons, thus inflicting heavy casualties on the invaders.
Oh dang! Holy crap! All right, that's pretty OP. That's pretty awesome.
By the morning of the 19th, the northern attack had been repelled, and more than 2,500 Turkish bodies floated at the entrance of the harbour. After the failed assault, Mehmed Pasha focused all his attention on the southern land walls. For over a month, preparations were made to attack the towers of England, Provence and Italy, while the army resupplied and rested. Finally, on July 27th, the moat in front of the land walls was filled, and an assault was launched on the ruins of the Italian tower. The first wave of Bashi bazooka regulars broke through the breach, followed by a second wave of janissaries. After some time, the defenders retreated from the damaged walls to their new defences in the Jewish quarter. However, as Ottoman troops pushed through the walls, they encountered a kill zone where they were hit with gunfire from the palisades and crossbow fire from the ruined towers of Italy and Provence to their rear. Although the former tower was briefly captured during a fierce fight, the defense in the Jewish quarter proved too strong for even the elite janissaries to overcome. In the bloody melee, D'Aubusson gathered a group of knights and personally climbed the ruined Italian tower to recapture it, but not before suffering a spear wound to the chest.
Ooh.
As Ottoman standards fell from the tower, the morale of the invaders was broken, marking another disastrous attempt to take the city. Seeing his chances to capture Rhodes fade away, Mehmed Pasha ended the siege on August 7th.
Oh wow.
The Ottoman Grand Admiral lost more than half of his forces during the siege, compared to only a few hundred Hospitallers. When Mehmed Pasha returned to Constantinople, he was stripped of all commands and titles from the Sultan and exiled to Gallipoli. The siege of Rhodes was a bloody defeat for Mehmed II, as his plans to dominate the Aegean Sea were dashed.
Never mind. Forget what I was saying earlier. If they really are gonna throw in the towel and not come back, then good on Rhodes, bro. Like I'm so used to the Ottomans just winning, I didn't expect them to actually prevail. Wow, good on Rhodes.
Even before the siege of Rhodes, Sultan Mehmed II had begun preparing for his main military campaign planned for the summer of 1480. After the fall of Albania in 1478 and the Despotate of Epirus in 1479, the gateway to Italy had been opened for Ottoman forces to invade. Since his infamous conquest of Constantinople nearly 30 years earlier, Mehmed II had looked westward, toward the ancient lands of Italy. After decades of brutal wars across the Balkans, Anatolia and the Mediterranean, the expansive Ottoman armies and navies were now ready to take the eternal city of Rome. And it seemed that Islam's final victory over Christianity was just over the horizon. With Venice promising not to intervene in the upcoming war, the Adriatic Sea was open for crossing, making Italy ripe for the taking. By the summer of 1480, the newly appointed governor of Lori, Gedik Ahmed Pasha, prepared for the upcoming campaign, assembling a force of 18,000 soldiers and 140 ships. The first phase of the invasion involved capturing the region of Apulia, specifically the coastal towns of Brindisi, Taranto and Otranto. From there, it was expected that the army would be reinforced with fresh levies from the Balkans, and march either on the Neapolitan capital of Naples, or possibly even march to Rome itself. The original plan was to land in Brindisi. However, after learning from a merchant ship captured while en route from Otranto to Durrës that there were almost no coastal defences further south, Ahmed Pasha decided to make his main landing near Otranto. On the morning of Friday, July 28th, a squadron of cavalry landed secretly near the castle of Rocca. It quickly moved through the countryside towards Otranto, capturing many residents and cattle. The first skirmish of the campaign occurred when the garrisons of Otranto sallied out and defeated a small Turkish force near the lakes of Elimini, freeing many prisoners in the process. However, as more Ottoman troops began landing all along the coast, the garrison was pushed back behind the town's walls. With terms of surrender rejected by the garrison, the official siege of Otranto commenced. For 15 long days, Turkish cannons bombarded the coastal town. Poorly defended and morale broke.
Yeah, so I don't think this is gonna work, because I'm trying to remember the full map of the Ottoman Empire. I don't believe they ever had Rome or that much of Italy under their banner. So I'm willing to guess that they don't. I could be wrong. Like I said, let me fact check myself, wait. Yeah, so most maps I see of the Ottoman Empire, they never even have a little bit of Italy under their banner. So, yeah, it tells me that taking Rome, the city, ain't gonna happen. Alright.
From the constant bombardment, the town's garrison could not resist the Ottoman war machine for much longer. On August 11th, Ahmed Pasha ordered an assault on the land walls, and after a short struggle, Otranto fell to the invaders. Otranto was the first mainland territory in Italy to be occupied by a Muslim power since the Emirate of Taranto was overthrown by the Eastern Romans in 880. In the days after the fall, the town was sacked by the Turkish army, which saw thousands of its inhabitants killed and enslaved. With the sudden fall of it,
Dang, the 813 people who were killed were canonized in 2013 by Pope Francis as the martyrs of... That's nice. That's really nice.
Otranto, Ottoman raiders now pillaged their way through the Italian countryside, reaching the gates of Lecce and Brindisi to the north and Taranto to the west. The port settlement of Vieste was also assaulted by Ottoman ships by the end of August, but was eventually repelled by the town's more prepared garrison. However, just as the conquest of Apulia was about to begin, Ahmed Pasha returned to Albania with the bulk of his army to winter, as the campaigning season for the year had come to an end. Seen as a gateway into Italy, Otranto was left with a token garrison of 6,500, led by Hayreddin Mustafa Bey, the island governor of Negroponte. It was envisioned that a future campaign further into Italy would be launched the following year. While Ottoman armies fought in Rhodes and Otranto, Turkish raiders in the Balkans once again penetrated deep into Europe. While Frederick III and Matthias Corvinus were waging war in Austria, the regions of Carniola, Carinthia, and Styria were ravaged. Loot was taken from the land, villages were burned, and many peasants were enslaved. The raiders were seen as far north as Rottenman in central Austria and as far west as Arnoldstein near the Venetian border. It was during this heightened chaos in the wider region that the Republic of Ragusa, a vassal of the Sultan, officially agreed to increase its tribute to the Sublime Porte to 15,000 ducats a year. In return, the Ottoman Sultan guaranteed military protection for Ragusa and granted the Republic extensive trading privileges in the Aegean and Black Seas. As the Balkans were in turmoil and Turkish troops were now stationed in Italy, Pope Sixtus IV called for a crusade against Mehmed. In a rare display of European cooperation against Ottoman aggression, a military alliance was formed among the papacy, Naples, Genoa, Ferrara, Siena, Bologna, Lucca, Mantua, Montferrat, and Hungary in the spring of 1481, with an army and a fleet assembled to retake Otranto. King Ferdinand I of Naples appointed his son, Duke Alfonso of Calabria, to lead the Allied forces and siege the town on May 1st. However, as the siege started, shocking news from the east arrived, surprising both the attackers and defenders. During the harsh winter of 1480 to 1481, Sultan Mehmed II's health deteriorated significantly while he resided in his new palace in Constantinople. For over 20 years, the Sultan had suffered from gout.
Oof.
However, with the arrival of spring, his condition improved, and he began planning new military campaigns against either the Mamluks, the Knights Hospitaller, or Italy. On April 25th, the Sultan travelled to Hunkaciere, about 50 miles from Constantinople, to inspect his forces. But just 5 days into his inspection, Mehmed fell ill again with another gout attack and developed several new ailments, shocking his chief physician. The court's second doctor, an Italian Jewish convert named Yakub Pasha, also administered medicine to the Sultan. Still, according to some Ottoman sources, he had slowly poisoned Mehmed in the weeks before his departure from the capital. Regardless of the circumstances, Sultan Mehmed II died in his tent on May 3rd, 1480.
Dang, that's how it goes out. Wow. Just as, like, again, like, he accomplished so much in his life, and yet by the end he still had so much more he wanted to do between Rhodes, the Mamluks, Rome, Italy. And yeah, kind of very Alexander-esque in that regard, who I think he even read and looked up to, like, you know, going out, but still having so many more plans. And again, he had that conqueror spirit, so much more. He you know, if he had been in good health, I could have seen him going forever until, you know, old age killed him. Wow. And even the poisoning thing, like, like how Alexander was kind of rumored to be poisoned, that's a theory that's proposed, so I guess even that's going on with him, so definitely lives up to the title, the Conqueror. Like, Mehmed was amazing. It is really telling that Kings and Generals gave him his own season, because again, with the first part of the rise of the Ottomans, we went through many sultans, but I guess even Kings and Generals realizes that this man needed his own season to cover everything he did. So good for him. Again, like I said, I was only really familiar with Mehmed from the Vlad Tepes confrontation in Wallachia, and obviously the famous taking of Constantinople. But you know, getting to learn about everything else he did, yeah, the man was certainly great. And, you know, rip Mehmed, dude. Like, man was a true conqueror.
While gathering his armies. He was 49 years old.
Dang, so young. And I know life expectancy, especially centuries ago, is different, and, you know, but I don't know, it just still, 49 seems young to me, even with lower life expectancy whenever. I'm not sure what it was around this age, but still, it just, dang. To me, it's like young, you know?
The Sultan, who reigned over the empire for over 32 years, over the course of 2 separate reigns, had been the most energetic and determined ruler in his state's history. During his long tenure in power, the Ottoman state had been transformed from being a decentralized feudal sultanate into a highly centralized bureaucratic empire. The old Turkic Ghazi nobility, which had dominated affairs within the Sublime Porte, had been entirely sidelined in favor of a new class of Balkan elite comprising Devshirme converts, all part of the Sultan's Kul system. This system was a form of political servitude that empowered the central government to appoint men who owed their wealth and social status to the Sultan, rather than men from aristocratic families with substantial private wealth. After the 1450s, such men were appointed to high offices within the central bureaucracy, the palace, the provincial administration, and the military. All of these developments came at the expense of the Turkic marcher lords of old, who had first expanded Ottoman power into the Balkans a century earlier. Over time, Turkish aristocratic families in Anatolia also had their hereditary lands transformed into state-owned timars, in which the Sultan could direct his power over them. By replacing the remnants of the old Turkic elite, the gates were opened to the Devshirme class to wield absolute power within the empire in the future. Mehmed also took the first steps to centralize the empire's coinage by establishing a central mint in the capital.
Yeah, I think the key word here is centralized, which is interesting because later on with the Ottomans, and we covered their fracturing and whatnot in other videos, being informed that a lot of their like areas, I guess, I'm not sure provinces is the right word to use, but kind of became semi-independent as things seem to be much less centralized near the end of their you know, existence and whatnot, and even like vassals straight up rebelling and becoming even a threat to the main empire, like with Egypt. So yeah, that's really interesting. Mehmed's reforms were definitely something I took a lot of note of, and it's really cool to see you know, like all the changes he made and how he really ran, you know, his empire. Then I think the man was definitely a genius, not only in terms of the military front, but also the political front. He was really great.
Called the Defana, which replaced local mints in the provinces. With the Sublime Porte now able to regulate its own currency, it gave the state the power to reduce its dependence on foreign currency and directly oversee its production. The Sultan also initiated the process of centralizing law within the empire through the gradual development of a new codified Ottoman law code known as the Kanunnama, which his great-grandson, Suleiman the Magnificent, later completed in the 16th century. Additional centralization occurred through the millet system, which allowed Christians and Jews some local autonomy under their religious leaders, who in turn paid allegiance to the central government. Like his father, the Sultan had also been a hefty spender, as he was a patron of the arts and learning. During his reign, he brought many scholars, architects, and artists from across the Islamic world and Europe to strengthen not only his new capital, but also to satisfy his quest for knowledge. Culturally and intellectually, Mehmed II was unusually open to Renaissance ideas for a Muslim ruler of his time. Fascinated by classical antiquity, he collected Greek and Roman manuscripts, commissioned translations, and modeled himself after conquerors like Alexander the Great. His court attracted Italian artists, most notably Gentile Bellini, who painted his portrait in the Renaissance style. Mehmed's curiosity also extended to philosophy, geography, and science, and he sought conversations with European humanists. While staying firmly rooted in Islamic traditions, he absorbed parts of Renaissance humanism, blending them into his imperial image. However, the majority of the money spent by the Sultan during his reign was for military purposes. Between 1451 and 1481, Ottoman armies and fleets were engaged in numerous military campaigns, which significantly drained the state's fiscal and human resources. During these 30 years, only 3 years were spent in relative peace. However, even during these breaks, Mehmed continuously planned new conquests to expand his empire. As a result, the Sultan was seen as a heavy spender and an unpopular figure among many in Ottoman society. The military was exhausted and stretched to its physical limits. Ordinary citizens of the empire were overtaxed and forced to live in a constant wartime economy, while many in the bureaucracy feared the Sultan's authoritarian tendencies in controlling all aspects of government. In sum, Mehmed II's legacy is one of synthesis. He combined military might with cultural curiosity, Islamic governance with Renaissance influence, and ruthless ambition with pragmatic statecraft. His reign not only reshaped the Ottoman world, but also reverberated across Europe and Asia, securing his place as one of history's pivotal rulers. With Mehmed's death, the Turkish foothold in Italy was lost, as Otranto was surrendered by the summer of 1481, as the Ottoman state was engulfed in a civil war between the Sultan's two sons, Bayezid and Cem. With the fall of the town came an end to a potential new era of Muslim expansion into Europe. As another chapter closed for the Ottoman Empire, a new one was opened in the years after Mehmed's death. In the next season of our series on Ottoman history, we will delve into the eventful reigns of Bayezid II and Selim I, while also examining how the empire expanded its influence deeper into Europe and the Middle East. To ensure you don't miss that, make sure you are subscribed and have pressed the bell.
So he's done, and I've mentioned before, with Kings and Generals, I only watch his long seasons now, so I can avoid comments telling me to look at the long seasons. So I won't be looking at the individual parts he's releasing until he releases the next long season. You know, that's just how I operate with Kings and Generals. You know, I watch his long videos only. But, this was really great, like I said. You know, I'll say this with the Ottomans. I wasn't that fascinated with them. There are some topics that I feel like I watch all recommendations, but there are some I'm like, yes, and then there are some like, I guess I'll watch it, like, you know. The Ottomans were definitely that. I was like, alright, this is part of my list of recommendations. I'll get to it and then move on to something else. And, you know, I will say I do have a newfound appreciation for the Ottomans. Like, before it was more of, like, I didn't really care much or didn't have much of an interest in them. But I will say, this series definitely, these past seasons definitely has given me a lot more insight into them. And a lot more appreciation for learning about them. So, I will say, this is definitely a really interesting empire. And I'm really looking forward to more. Like I said, I think we'll definitely be back with the Ottomans before this year's over. I think, um, you know, with the way Kings and Generals seems to give the Ottomans a good amount of time, I think we'll be back with these guys for sure. So who knows? We'll probably be watching the next season before the end of 2026, hopefully. And yeah, overall, another great season, and feel free to let me know in the comments who your favorite Ottoman Sultan was in all of history. And I'll leave it at that. Bye, everyone.